What we're trying to do is melt the impurities. We're trying to deoxygenate the iron ore that's in there and melt any of the other things that were mixed in with that over the process of it being created. And what that does is it turns into that glass, it turns into mineral glass. And we have a name for that. It's called slag. So when we find one of these sites, we're actually looking for the slag heaps as well. Because the slag heap, what we find in there, tells us one really important thing, particularly how old that site is. Because when we started blooming iron, there was one thing that also happened. When you make your iron bloom, there's a little bit on the outside. Because it's in such a carbon-rich environment, it actually absorbs a little bit of that carbon. So instead of the outside of your bloom being iron, it actually turns into steel. And for about 150 to 200 years, at the beginning of the Iron Age, now the Iron Age didn't happen at the same time everywhere. It wasn't like, okay, Wednesday afternoon, right, Iron Age, lads. Different places have it starting at different times, but it always appears to be 150 to 200 years, no matter where it is. We find that crust, and we call it the steeled crust. We find it mixed in with the slag. And then we find absolutely none of it. They've suddenly realised, oh, hang on a minute, lads, this stuff's really good. We've got something here. It's better. It's harder. So we start then collecting that. And we put it together the same way as we do with the iron, which is this. When we've done our iron bloom, we have to pull the bloom out. The bloom, and I can tell you this absolutely certainly, when you get it out of the bloomery, your first thought when you're first doing it is, oh, we've made a cock up here. It looks like it's gone awfully wrong. It looks like a blob with glassy bits and chunky bits and metallic-y bits, and it looks awful. Then the refining comes in. And that then goes from the bloomer, the guy who actually did it in the first place, and then goes to the bloomsmith. The bloomsmith takes that bloom and he starts off with wooden anvils and wooden hammers, and he starts knocking it all together. And then, like I say, the steel crust falls off and he collects all that, puts it to one side. And he knocks his iron ore, his iron bloom rather, down and down and down until all the tiny little bits of iron that are in there, all the little metallic iron straps, are all knocked in together. And then he brings it up to what we call a welding temperature. So fire welding temperature for iron is about 14 to 1500 degrees centigrade. It is, in Fahrenheit, that's all of them.
Yeah.
That's all the Fahrenheit. Every Fahrenheit, yeah. It's really hot. We always say you know when the iron is ready to weld because it looks angry. It is bright, white, hot, and it is spitting sparks. And those sparks are telling us that there's things ready. But what's also happened in there is this. All of those silicates inclusions that were in there already, the ones we actually kind of want, the reason we want them is it turns into a flux. So what a flux does is it actually protects the material in the welding process. So does anyone know what happens to silica sand when it goes above 1200 degrees?
Glass.
Yes, exactly right. It turns into glass. That glass literally coats all of that iron. And once the glass has coated it, no oxides can form. No oxygen can get to it. Nothing else can get to it. It literally protects it, seals it in a little glass case. But it's liquid. So when I come to tap it together, all that glass picks up all the little bits of impurities, all the stuff that would stop it from sticking, and it shoots out the side and leaves me two completely clean surfaces that stick, one to the other. And we do this again and again and again. We can forge this horrible blob of stuff, and we forge that down into what we call a billet. And that is pretty much where the bloomsmith's job stops. He doesn't really make anything else. He just takes an iron bloom and turns it into an iron billet. Now, depending how he's done it, depending what went in there, we have different quality of iron. So then, I come in. I'm not a bloomsmith, I'm a blacksmith. So what I do is I will go down to our friendly local bloomery and say, for instance, you come to me and said, oh, I need some new fire chains making for my fireplace. I go, well, okay. They're going to need to have some strength. So what I'll do is I'll go up to our bloomery guy and I'll say, look, I need some of your medium sort of grade iron. And he'll go, all right, that pile over there, work away.
So it was graded.
Oh, it's graded, yeah. It's graded even back then.
Okay.
So I go to the medium sort of quality stuff. There's not much inclusion in it, a little bit, not too much. And that's what I can make your chains out of. Now, they're going to be still fairly expensive because that material is, but it's not the best stuff. Now, someone else might come and say, now, the irony here is we didn't actually shoe horses in Ireland in the 13th century, but if you had have said, I want my horses shoeing, I would go, don't need the good stuff with that. It's not really structural integrity, it's not holding anything, so it just needs to be right shape. Grand. Where's the really rubbish stuff? Oh, in that pile over there, work away. Now, you come to me, put in mind now you're a carpenter, okay? Answer me this question. How many trees do you think you can cut down with your teeth? Probably 0. Maybe a small one, you know. So you need me. You need to come to me then, and what do you need? You need an axe, right? Now I'm going to go to the bloomery and I'm going to say, I now need 2 things. 1, I need the best grade iron you have. And do you have any steel? So there we come to all of those little bits of steel crust that he collected. And what he's done is he's done the same thing. He's put them into a little pat and he's forge welded them into a billet. Beauty is steel welds at a lower temperature. You only really had to get those up to about 1100 degrees or so and they'll weld happy. Okay. So he's made that bit of steel. Now the only problem is it's a poor quality steel. It is steel, but it's what we would call a low to medium carbon. Now it might kind of work, but I can make it better. So what I do is I've got my little piece of steel and I've got my piece of iron. I'm going to come back, I'm going to take my piece of steel, I'm going to put it in my hearth, and I'm going to bring it up to, if everyone just looks in the middle of the fire here, you can see sort of a dull orange colour. Yep. In fact, I can actually say a bit more. It's actually that colour right there. So that is what we call critical temperature, as luck would have it. I think I've done this before. So once that's at critical temperature, more of that carbon migration can happen, particularly in steel. So I cook my steel. I become Tony the chef instead of Tony the blacksmith briefly. And I cook the steel for days. Days. 5 or 6 days.
Well, no wonder it's so expensive.
Exactly. Then what I do is I take my chunk of steel and I forge that out into a strip. I cut it into bits and I weld it all together. And then I do it again, and I do it again. And what I've done there is I have mixed all of the different grades of carbon steel up to make one sort of semi-homogeneous piece. Then I can start to make your axe. And that's what we were doing. But that's really what my job was. 13th century, I'm a toolmaker. So without me, everyone else is in a bad place. Because you can't chop down. Exactly that.
Can't cut it.
Well, you can probably hunt just about, but you can hunt a lot easier if you've got steel or iron tips on your arrows.
Right.
You could take down trees. You could do it the old-fashioned method with stone tools. It's easier doing it with an iron one, particularly one with a steel blade on it. You know? And it's why we end up. And the funny thing is, we have records in Ireland where it actually gives us an opportunity to figure out roughly how much things would have cost. So this is one of my favorite. This is one of my babies. I do have human babies, but frankly, they're easier to make than this. So,
Spoken like a man.
For you.
I was going to say that's fine. Literally the next. Well, for me anyway. So, in fairness, my wife always says, "Jesus, if the house is on fire, you'd run back inside for the axe." I went, "No, I wouldn't. I'd run back inside for the guitar. Anyway, I'd just have to put a new handle on the axe; it'd be fine." But anyway, so this is one of my babies. So the reason being is last year I was doing a different. So this, by the way, what we're having here is actually a little bit of experimental archaeology. That's what we're doing here at the minute. Last year's one was slightly different because I wanted to do something a bit earlier. So last year's forge was actually a 8th to 10th century sort of Viking period forge, and it's all ground based. All sitting on the ground, all 2-hand bellows, the whole works outside. And what I really wanted to do is I wanted to see, one of my primary questions was, well, we know the quality of things our Viking ancestors could make because we still find quite a few. But what is the real difference? What was the major difference from forging something in a Viking period forge to forging something on my forge I would use at home? Now, the funny thing is, I always say, well, obviously it's going to be wildly different, but the funny thing is it really isn't. My fire is still a fire. Granted, I don't use charcoal, I use coke, which is the modern blacksmithing fuel. I don't use bellows, what I have is an air blower. But the effect is still the same. I'm still blowing air into a fire in a fireplace. My anvil, so this is the anvil I was using all last year. This is a copy of mine of a very late 10th century artisan. And you see it's kind of small, it's very little, it only weighs about 19 kilograms. But it's still an anvil, it's still a mass of material that I hit things with. The hammer was the same. So what I did was I forged 2 axes. Now this is what we call a multi-part axe, so this is made out of 3 pieces of wrought iron and 1 piece of high carbon tool steel. This one was forged here, and what I realised, what I came up to while I was doing it, is the only thing that was different, really, is time. That was it. Just time. It took me a grand total of 39 hours to forge this axe. Now, that's quite a long time. 39 hours at the forge. So if you imagine in that 39 hours how much fuel I had to use and how much effort went into doing it, even just prepping the materials to begin with. Huge amount of effort, huge amount of cost. If you imagine how expensive the material was to begin with as well. It's why when we look at these, why we find so many of them, because they were precious to the people who had them. They were literally buried with them. They were taken, what's the one thing you're going to bring with you into the afterlife? I'm bringing my iron with me. Why? Because it's really expensive, you know? So we actually figured out roughly how much these things cost. And one of the ways we did that is we know how much a sword used to cost in 11th century Ireland, because it was written down. So one sword in 11th century Ireland cost 4 horses.
Holy.
Wow.
Cost of 4 horses, which was, each horse was worth 3 cattle. Each cow was worth 19 sheep or goats. And each sheep or goat was worth 56 game fowl.
Got the math going.
We got the math going, but the funny thing is, from very slightly later, we also have a silver cost in silver by weight for 1 sheep. So that means we can actually figure out roughly how much these things would have cost. And it turns out, the way we calculate that now by weight, in today's money, a sword would have cost you between 20 and 30,000 euros. 20 and 30,000 euros. Huh?
Yeah,
40,
great.
50, what is it?
Paid
What's
for
that?
car.
40,
Canadian
$50,000.
dollars. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's why they were buried with it.
Yeah,
I'm taking this with me, guys. Pass it down to my children? Hell no. You know, they can buy their own one. No, this is it. So this is what it was. These items were precious because they were really expensive. A really big war axe, so something like a Dane axe, was still in all likelihood costing people somewhere in the region of about 8 to 10,000 euros. It's one of the reasons why axes like this is a copy of one from the Mastermere find. This identifies as a Patterson type L axe. Funny thing about this axe is, if I ask you what is this for,
It's not for chopping down trees.
it ain't for chopping down trees.
Oh, battle.
This is for chopping down people. Yeah, exactly. This is a battle axe,
Long
war axe.
handle.
Right? The handle being quite long is one thing. The other thing is how the bit works as well. When we see a bit where the beard goes downhill, it's a tool. And usually the blade is still curved, but usually straighter. When the beard goes up, now bear in mind this is my combat safe axe, because when we study our combat and our fighting, when we do our reenactment fighting, technically we're not really allowed to let each other leak. So we do tend to make sure they're blunt. The live version of this axe, because like I say, this one has a brother that was made in my own forge at home. The live axe, the point on this side comes up to about there.
Oh, okay.
And it does come up to a vicious stabbing point, and that's literally what it was for. It's a stabbing point as well. Incidentally, its brother took 9 hours to make. Quarter of the time. Same material,
With the
same
new,
process.
new furnace and such.
Bigger furnace,
Big coke and
hotter fire, much bigger anvil, and a much bigger hammer that allowed me to do. Incidentally, this whole axe was forged with that hammer. So this is also, ironically, this hammer is also one of the hammers from the Mastermere find. So I literally forged the axe with the hammer the same guy would have used to make this, which is, for me, that's really cool.
That's
Very
really
cool.
I really, really love stuff.
So did you grow up doing this, or did you learn this later in life? Like, when did you start getting into this? Did your family do this before?
No,
Like,
actually,
okay.
my family, there is, the nearest thing I have to a blacksmith in my family was my great uncle on my mother's side was what we call a striker.
Okay.
So a striker is the big strong guy who spends his
big
entire
hammer.
life swinging massive sledgehammers from that side of the anvil. And he was a blacksmith striker in a coal mine.
Okay.
So all coal mines have their own, usually always have their own forge, because they don't have a lack of fuel. So that's what he was. But no, I was very lucky. I grew up just down the road from a working forge, and from the age of about year big, every time we went past in the car with my old fella, my head would be on a spring, trying to look through the door and see what he was doing. So when I turned 14, my very, very stubborn father stopped the car one day and went, "Go and talk to him." And I was 14, so I'm like, so my father went, "Fair enough," turned the engine off, pulled the handbrake on, and picked his newspaper out of the passenger seat and went, "Well, you can explain to everybody why we're not moving." And basically embarrassed me out of the car. And as I got out the car, the hand went in the pocket. I was born and grew up in the UK. But his hand went in the pocket, came out with a £1 coin, and went, "There you go up to the phone and ring me." Now, no mobiles. This was go to the payphone at the end there and call me when you're done.
Yeah.
And I'll come pick you up again. And I was basically standing, if you can imagine the scene there, where it's not too dissimilar from this. Door was a little further away, anvil was very much bigger. But my old master, Alan, was standing like this, and he sort of goes, "Come in or go away." Only he didn't say "go away." It was a 2-word phrase ending in "off." So I didn't off. I went, "Okay, I'll come in," and I did. And I spent from the age of 14 to the age of just about a week before my 20th birthday working with him. When I met him, he was 77. And when it, like say, 6 years, by the time he hit his 83rd birthday, and he went, "You know what, lad? I think I might actually be getting too old for all this malarkey." And it's like, "Well, you are millions of years old, And he's like, "No, oh, you." But he says, "Right, lad." He says, "You've got your hammer. This is the first hammer I ever forged. Been using this for nearly 30 years this year."
So you made your own tool?
Oh yeah, yep. First thing I did with him was this, because at 14 I was fairly tough. I was fairly strong. No one's blacksmith strong when you're 14. So most of his hammers I could swing for a grand total of about 5 minutes.
Okay.
And then I needed a half-hour rest. So he was like, "Right, we'll make you a smaller hammer." And ironically enough, I still use it now. I use it here quite a bit because, frankly, it's a little bit quieter. I mostly, in my own forge, I swing a much bigger hammer most of the time. Now, this one comes in, this is called, it's a French pattern hammer, and my wife is German, so its name is Brunhilde. Or Hildi for short, So, because of course it's French pattern, must have a German name. So this is it, but she comes in at about 2.01 pounds, just under the kilo.
Oh yeah, like a big